Well, well, good morning, everyone. This is John Craig, and you are listening to Let Us Reason Together here on YouTube Live with LambTube. And so I am joined this morning by my beautiful wife that you see next to me, and good friends James Myers and Tom Collins, and you can see them in the little picture on your screen right now. And we will get. I gotta do my introduction stuff first.
You're really weird.
But
it's weird.
What I just want to let everybody know who's on the screen with us. No, I said Tom. I said Tom. I said my good friends James
Tom,
Myers
Sandy, and James.
That's right.
Tom, Sandy, James, and John.
There we go. That's right. Okay. All right. So here we go. So I am your second day of the week host for Let Us Reason Together. We're going to reason out some things today, and it's based off of Isaiah 118. Come now and let us reason together, says Yahweh. Though your sins are as scarlet, they will be as white as snow. Though they are red like crimson, they will be like wool. So this is where we sit down and reason out our current events, cultural shifts, and of course this week's Torah portion. We can either push back or push through. Nevertheless, if iron does not sharpen iron, sparks will never fly, let alone ever get a fire going. So with a little heat and a good midrash, how will our hearts ever get soft and moldable enough to be transformed in the way that the Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, wants us to be? So today is Monday, November 19th, 2018. It is on the Hebrew calendar, the 11th day of the 9th month of Kislev in the Hebrew year of 5779. This is an interactive show, and so you can be part of the chat in the live chat room on Lamb Radio. We'd love for you to participate that way. And I don't know what the phone number is to call in, but we're going to have to get that worked out because we can do call-ins technically. Also, you can find out more information about us on the Facebook page on Lamb Radio. So go to Lamb Radio Facebook page, and also our website, www.isaiah118.com. And then I just want to put a plug in for a Messianic Lamb Radio. If you're listening, we would love for you to help sponsor this program and pray about what you can donate and give. And there's a sponsors button or a donation button there on messianiclambradio.com. And that's where you can also find all sorts of updates. We'll talk about that later. Hey, we've got a great show planned for you today. Besides, well, we've got the Torah portion, the Haftarah portion we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about some current events that are going on, specifically that which is affecting biblical faith. We're going to talk about that. And I got some things to unwrap our brains a little bit, as well as what's going on today.
What does that look like when you unwrap a brain?
Unwrap a brain?
Show me. I want to demonstrate it right here. Unwrap your brain. I'm waiting. See, James did it.
Well, there you go. There you go. You've had a demonstration of how to unwrap your brain.
He should, you know what? He did better than I. He should unmute himself and so we could hear him unwrap his brain.
I wonder what that would sound like.
There was no sound.
Would it be creaky?
What is yours? That's the question.
Mine would be sparky.
Like zit, 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 zit.
That's right.
Tazzy Sparky.
I didn't know that James was such a good mime.
Just needs the white gloves. All right.
I'm not quick enough on this unmute and mute thing, so I'm just going to be doing this today. So you guys have to understand.
All right. So today is, by the way, 5 Random Meetings Day. 5 Random Meetings Day. It's also No Quirks Day. So none of those quirky things going on. And it's, guess what? It's No Show at Work Day.
Can I not show up for work today?
I guess.
Oh, Sandy, I thought you were already at Kingdom.
I know, exactly.
Here's something else. It's actually an actual observed day annually on November 19th. It's Have a Bad Day.
No way. I rebuke that.
I know. Can you believe that?
Take that back. I don't even put that out in the air.
And throw that together with equal opportunity. We can equally have a bad day.
Negative.
All right.
I disagree.
Negative.
Let's mute John.
But here's a thing. It's International Men's Day.
Okay.
And you know what they also call, there you go. It's also what they call Movember. So on this day annually, it's called Movember, and where it speaks specifically about men's health awareness and men's mental health awareness month.
Uh-oh, you're in trouble.
So this is we can. So that's my excuse. What's yours?
So what are you going to plug now? Tell the men
Well,
about their.
all I can say is this: is that it's National Blow Bagpipes Day. So in November, we're going to blow bagpipes.
Is that going to help your mental health?
And play Monopoly Day.
Not with you. I will not play Monopoly with you.
I'm trying to have an image of someone multitasking while they're playing the bagpipes and playing Monopoly at the same time.
I don't think it would ever happen.
Well, let's couple that together with one other interesting day that's being celebrated, and it's World Toilet Day.
Do you have that down, my dear?
World Toilet Day.
Any comment?
I cleaned ours yesterday. One of them.
We had a surprise guest last night.
That's right.
I don't want to know about that.
We just had
John, flush twice.
it's somebody that showed up at our door, and I always make John clean his own bathroom because it's the guest bathroom. So
flush twice. It's very important when guests come.
Oh my. Right. Okay. But toilet talk. Let's change.
Yeah.
So what's very interesting is where they call it Movember. I said, I wonder what would be interesting if we called each day and put M in the front of each special day today.
Like it'd be Maple.
Blow Magpipes Day. Or like Moilet Day.
You're weird.
You know, I just like Movember. I just thought that was weird. It struck me at 5 o'clock in the morning when I'm going through this stuff, preparing for the day.
Did you get tickled by it?
I got tickled by it. All right. Nobody was here to be tickled with me. Everybody was still sound asleep.
No, not true.
You weren't sound asleep?
No.
Okay. All right. How about the quotes of the day? Positive quote of the day from James Allen says, "You are today where your thoughts have brought." So
well, that's true.
So let's not go in the toilet, and let's not have a bad day. Right? That's true.
Why don't we take our thoughts captive and speak forth life?
There you go.
It's the same concept.
How about the funny quote of the day? So everybody has to be ready to laugh at this one. And this is not from one of my greatest philosophers in life, but it is from Woody Allen. It says, "I'm awash in self-contempt." Yeah. Okay. All right. I didn't think it was very funny either, but it was on my list. And then also love quote of the day from Jonathan Lockwood Huey. "The greatest roadblock to a great relationship is trying to force a partner to change through bribes or threats."
It does not work. I agree.
There you go. All right. How about verse of the day? Verse of the day I took from the Haftarah portion, and it's from Hosea 12:6. "Therefore, return to your God, observe kindness and justice, and wait for your God continually." I like that. I thought that was really good. Observe kindness and justice, and wait for your God continually. So things that happened on this day in history. Did you know what happened in 1493?
Tell us.
As opposed to 1492? Well, Christopher Columbus discovered Puerto Rico on this day on his second voyage. And we've got some folks from Puerto Rico that are part of our congregation.
We do. We are
so
very
that's
blessed.
Kind of struck me. And then in 1620, the Mayflower reaches Cape Cod and explores the coast. That's right. Almost 400 years ago when the Mayflower arrived. And then 1805, Lewis and Clark, their expedition reached the Pacific Ocean. They were the first European Americans to cross the West. And how about this? In 1861, what was going on in the 1860s? The Civil War, right? Well, in 1861, the first petroleum shipment. Yes, America was an exporting nation in 1861 of oil. And it left Philadelphia and it went to London, England. 1,329 barrels of oil. Yep, that happened on this day in 1861. 1863, U.S. President Abraham Lincoln delivers his Gettysburg. Yes, it says Gettysburg address, beginning with fourscore and 7 years ago. There you go. And then
Remember what a score is?
fourscore is 20.
No.
A score is 20.
A score is 20.
So,
Four
so
score is
that,
not 20.
so that would have been 87 years ago. So, and then 1869, Apollo 12's Charles Conrad and Alan Bean become the third and fourth humans on the moon. And in 1985, U.S. President Ronald Reagan and Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev met for the first time. 1985. That was before the famous speech, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And then 1998, more of the scandalous things that happened in our nation. Remember what happened then? It was the Lewinsky scandal. In the United States House of Representatives Judiciary Committee begins impeachment hearings against U.S. President Bill Clinton. Yep, those are different things that happened this day in history. Whose birthdays? Famous birthdays for today. Remember the guy, Billy Sunday? And you don't remember Billy Sunday?
No.
He was an American evangelist.
Bill. I'm thinking of movies. Yeah.
Billy Sunday.
Absolutely.
I was thinking of the guy with the guns, the cowboy.
That's sort of what I was trying to go for. Not
My bad, Billy.
He was born on this day in 1862. And then also, Larry King's birthday is today. He was born in 1933. And another famous person in the world, Indira Gandhi. She was the fourth Prime Minister of India. It's her birthday today. And I had to look that one up and look a little bit more information. She served as a prime minister from 1966 to 1977 in India, and from 1980 until her assassination in 1984. So it makes her the second longest serving prime minister of India and the only woman to hold that office, which is, when you consider India and the different cultural things going on there, that's pretty significant.
Yes.
So, but the fact that she was assassinated, I didn't realize that.
You didn't?
No, I didn't realize she was assassinated.
Oh, I did. You should have asked me.
Yeah. Yep.
You didn't.
I didn't do that. Hey, so here's some things. We got to do this. All right. So, as we've already said, James Meyer from South Carolina, waving there. Good morning, James.
Shalom. How are you?
Good.
Good morning.
One of these days, you're going to have to put on the white gloves.
I thought you meant black box.
Some boxing.
He was doing
Michael Jackson. Oh, the mime.
The mime thing. Yeah. Right. And then we got Tom Collins from Oklahoma. Good morning, Tom. Okay. And then Miss Sandi Craig.
You already introduced me.
I know. I just have to say it again. On the lighter side of things, okay, jumpstart our brain. If you don't want to unwrap your brain, because some people might be a little calloused up there, we're gonna jumpstart it. So, some wit for the day, untwist your brain, some points to ponder. Okay, before we get to the Haftarah portion, which will be next, and so this is for men and women. You're gonna have to stick around for either next week or the following week when we do the women on this. This is for classes for men that women think men need to have. So. Week 1 of evening classes for men. Number 1, toilet rolls. Do they grow on the holders? And this is going to involved in that. It's going to be a roundtable discussion. How about this? Number 2, differences. This is another class. Number 2, differences between laundry baskets and the floor. So practicing in this class will be practicing with a hamper. And there's going to be pictures and graphics for that one. Then another class is dishes and cutlery. So do they levitate, fly to the kitchen sink, or dishwasher by themselves? So this is going to be a debate among a panel of experts. And this next class is going to be how to fill ice cube trays. Okay. And there's going to be a step-by-step guide.
I think that's obsolete now.
With slide presentations. Well, some people still have ice trays.
Okay.
But I don't use ice. So, and we have an ice maker. We don't even use the ice maker. And how about this one? empty milk cartons, do they belong in the fridge or in the trash can? And this is going to be a group discussion and role play. And learning how to find things. This is a class probably, Sandi, that you could probably help teach.
You could be, we
And
could both go to that class.
So it says starting with looking in the right place instead of turning the house upside down while screaming. And this is going to be an open forum. So
I know some classes I want to mention.
okay, so we're going to wait on that.
Just for a second.
Okay, so week 2, evening classes for men. And this is called the loss of virility. And this is, get this, losing the remote control to your significant other. And there's going to be a helpline and support groups for this one.
Okay, that's funny.
Okay. And then
sign me up.
And this next one is called Health Watch. And it's bringing her flowers is not harmful to your health.
Amen.
And there will be a PowerPoint presentation for this one. And then the next class is Real Men Ask for Directions When Lost.
Real men do.
Yeah, that's a great class. Real Men Ask for Directions When Lost. This is real life testimonial from the man who did it.
The man.
From the one man who did it.
Okay, that's funny.
Okay. All right. Oh. And then here's the next class. And this is, remember, this is week 2. Is it genetically impossible to sit quietly as she parallel parks? Is it genetically impossible to sit quietly as she parallel parks? And there's going to be driving simulations involved in this one. And how about this next class? Living with adults. And so this class is going to be about basic differences between your mother and your partner. And there'll be online class and role playing with this one.
Well, they could have the book, Your Wife Is Not Your Mother.
Why did you sigh when I read
I've
that
heard,
one?
I'm not saying.
Okay. And then number 12, how to be the ideal shopping companion. And it's going to involve relaxing exercises, meditation, and breathing techniques.
You know what? You don't have to take that. You already are ideal.
I pass.
You way past that one.
So I clip out of that one.
Actually, you're more of a shopper than I. So
I clip out of that one.
you clip. Maybe I need to take that class.
John, I'm disillusioned.
2 more classes here, and then you can say what your class should be. Remembering important dates and calling when you're going to be late. And you're supposed to bring your calendar or PDA to the class.
Okay.
All right. So that way, that's pretty good. And then the last one, getting over it. Learning how to live with being wrong all the time. And then I'm going to have individual counselors available for this class.
Amen.
John, you're going to have to stop this. Women are going to really think this is a class, and they're going to try to send us to it.
Anyway, I know a class that you would teach.
We'll post it on the internet. Believe everything you see on the internet.
Yeah, right. I know a class that you would teach.
What would that be?
Because you are an expert making piles. I do it best.
Is that should be a class?
That's the class you would teach, is how to make piles. You walk in the house and I know exactly where you've been because there's a pile. And I think you did not come. You're not the first generation.
Come in that house. You go to the mailbox. You come in.
Make a pile.
Make a pile.
You go somewhere else. A few feet away, you make another one.
You got to set down the stuff that you brought in from work.
You are an expert pile maker. That's all I can say.
You go in the other room, change clothes.
Another pile.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Maybe you need to. Maybe we need to find a. You need to take a class on how not to do that.
I worked a lot of years on that one. So.
Yeah.
Maybe it's how to break the pile.
Pile syndrome.
Pile syndrome. That's right. So anyway, do you feel like your brain's unwrapped now?
The second week was much funnier than the first week.
Okay. Well, yeah. I get this from a website put together by Brits.
You like British humor.
I do like British humor. I understand British humor.
It's because you grew up overseas.
I get it. I get it. So then you mix that with American humor, and I'm just a funny guy. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Let's move on before we go into that. No comments from the peanut gallery here. Okay, I think we're ready though for the Haftarah and the Brit Hadashah portion, and we've got Tom all lined up for us today for this segment. Now that we've got our brains all loosened up and jellified, so we can now begin to solidify things in our lives. Tom, what do you got for us today for the Haftarah and the Brit Hadashah?
One loose end here about the abolition of ICE you mentioned. I think the Democrats have already been pushing for a abolition of ICE of a different variety, as I recall. At any rate, a little bit of humor, very little. This subject of Hoshea, some people like to Hebraically put it, intrigued me because you don't go very far into this portion, which I'm sure, not to flatter you, James, you will expand as you are gifted, I think, greatly in going into some of the real depths of the instruction of the Torah. But here in Hosea 12, here we have this group known as Ephraim, or the Josephite seed, those that ended up, a number of them, up in the upper kingdom of Samaria in the land of Galilee of the nations, land of Zebulun and Naphtali, and very precious to Yahweh, as we'll see here in a moment. And yet there's some very strong admonition, exhortation here. In Hosea 12:1, it says, Ephraim chases the wind and pursues the east wind. He continually multiplies lies and violence. By the way, we have been chasing after wind in modern times over in the east and meddling in foreign affairs and trying to buy our lovers, as it says in Ezekiel 16, over in the east, significantly enough on one level here. He continually multiplies lies and violence. There are those that claim that the neocons were involved with lies and violence to get us involved in Iraq and in Iran, trying to democratize that, which will never happen in the minds generally of those of Islam. But at any rate, he makes a covenant with Assyria, and olive oil is carried to Egypt. I'm just going to leave that for commentary by you folks. That's some deep stuff here. Yahweh also, verse 2 of Hosea 12, has a dispute with Judah. He is about to punish Yaakov, or Jacob, according to his ways. How prophetic is the book of Hosea for these last days? I ask myself rhetorically. He will repay him based on his actions. In the womb, he grasped his brother's heel. Now, why did he do that? I know that's strange to some people. If you study midwifery and little babies in utero in their mother's wombs, if it's twins in particular, or even one child, male or female born, there is a place in the center of the top of the skull, the fontanelle, that's a membrane that's very thin for a time before there is a sealing over. And with little girls, the cleavage is very early, where they become chatterboxes by the time they're 2 or 3, as I learned with my little daughter, Summer Nicole. And here this heel is coming down, where there is an enmity between Esau, coming Edom generally, and Jacob, Yaakov. Right in the mother's womb, you have this conflict going on with him holding back that heel so he's not going to be potentially even killed in utero, is my understanding. Some really remarkable things happening here in this conflict. In the womb, he grasped his brother's heel. As an adult, he wrestled with Yahweh. Yaakov struggled with the Malachim, or holy messenger, angel, and prevailed. He wept and sought his favor. He found him at Bethel, and there he spoke with him. And of course, he won in a sense because the Malachim relented. Let me go. No, not until you bless me. I know in Ireland they have this strange connection with leprechauns, and if you don't let them go, they'll finally give up and take you to the pot of gold. That's kind of a perversion, I think, in Ireland of what really is spoken back here in this account in Genesis 32. He fought with him at Bethel, and there he spoke with him. Yahweh is the Elohim of hosts. Yahweh is his name. But you must return to your Elohim. Maintain love. Here's this commandment, and justice, or judgment. and always put your hope in Elohim. Immersion loves to extort with dishonest scales in his hand. Oh, there's some heavy admonition against that in the book of Proverbs about unjust weights and measures. We've got it with the Federal Reserve System to transport us for the moment into this century. But Ephraim says, how rich I have become. I've made it all myself and all my earnings. Makes you think of that song years ago by Frank Sinatra. I did it my way. Oh, my. In all my earnings, no one can find any crime in me. I'm innocent. Talk about him being in denial. I'm innocent. No one can find any crime in me that I could be punished for. And then it goes on to say in verse 9 of Hosea 12, I've been Yahweh, your Elohim, ever since the land of Egypt. Now, notice this. This is profoundly significant for us among, quote, Messianics that believe in the holy convocations, the Moedim. I will make you live in tabernacles or tents again. I know you, brethren, know we should be observant of the holy days. May likely put a smile on your face because this is happening to us today. We have been shown to live in tents again, as in the festival days, it goes on to say. That's one of the functions of the moon and the sun in Genesis. In Bereshit 1:14 is festivals. When you do a little bit of research, you'll see that's the purpose, how the moon guides us, and the greater light, the sun. I will make you live in tents again, as in the festival days. This will come to be so important to this world, finally, when it realizes, unless at least we send representatives up to Jerusalem to keep the Feast of Booths, tabernacles, not going to get any rain until they are guided with some twisting of arms, so to speak, no rain, and they at least have their representatives come up and observe the Feast of Tabernacles. That's how I tell people when they say, why do you observe these holy days? They say, well, in the future, apparently, because Yeshua is the same yesterday and today and forever. And he's the one who, using Moshe as his stenographer, as I call him, instructed us in Leviticus 23 about all these feasts that are Yahweh's feasts, that we show we love him, not that we're saved by them, but we express our love towards him by being on his PDA, his, by the way, that also is known as public display of affection, but we're on his schedule, not ours. Weekly Sabbath, annual Sabbaths, but here it's pinpointed. It goes on to say, I spoke through the prophets, including the original one who instructed us about the holy days in Leviticus 23, that I believe Abraham was already observing. Why do I say that? Because back in Genesis 26, Isaac is told the covenant, the brit, the cut, the relationship is going to be ongoing because Abraham obeyed my voice. That's a real charismatic Pentecostal statement. That's first and foremost listed, significant enough, and kept my commandments, my statutes, my laws. And because of that, Isaac, Yitzhak, is told, I'm going to continue on with this covenantal relationship with the children of Israel. That's easily read over what he said of Avram, Abraham, his friend. But it says, I spoke to the prophets and granted many visions. I gave parables through the prophets. Since Gilead is full of evil, they will certainly come to nothing. They sacrifice bulls in Gilgal. Even their altars will be like heaps of rocks. That's how much our Creator thinks of the idolatry that's spoken of here. On the furrows of a field. And it goes on from there towards the end of chapter 12:12. And it says here in this account that Jacob fled to the land of Aram in verse 12:12. Israel worked to earn a wife. He tended flocks for a while. We read about that with the manipulation of Laban, his very heavy-handed boss at that time. Yahweh brought Israel from Egypt by a prophet, and Israel was tended by a prophet. Ephraim has provoked bitter anger, so Yahweh will leave his blood guilt on him and repay him for his contempt. It ends with in a rather grim commentary about how not to emulate the parts of those that Yahweh loved that were worthy of these judgments, these condemnations of their behavior, not to bring us down and say, oh, no, it's to give us conviction. We don't want to go there. We see how other people have made their mistakes. Why would we want to replicate mistakes that estranged our forebears from our Creator?
Yes. You know what, Tom? I was just looking at this, and you're exactly right, because some of the things we put these things together. In verse 2 of chapter 12, it says, Yahweh also has a dispute with Judah and will punish Jacob according to his ways. And that dispute is a covenant lawsuit because of how we have really violated the Torah, where we violated our the instructions, where we've not loved our neighbor as ourselves. And you can look at it as, if you look at the migration pattern since the dispersion of the 12 tribes of Israel and where they went in the four corners of the earth, but how many of the northern kingdom has ended up in England and in North America. And then we look at what has North America done in the world in the last since World War II, and more specifically in the last 20 or 30 years, how it has brought it's gone out there with the cause and the purpose to dominate the world, that's caused many wars, using oil as a reason. Well, actually, oil has not been the reason. They said, well, we've got to purge the world of terrorism. We've got to purge the world of the drugs. We've got to purge the world of all these different things. But in fact, it's just to take control over resources of other nations. And that type of mistreating our neighbors, it surely will come back to bite us. And I think that's some of what Hosea is talking about, this pride of Ephraim, this pride that has to be dealt with in the world. I'm really concerned that we are actually living this day and this hour. James, what are your thoughts on it?
I felt like that this Haftarah portion was actually truly speaking to believers in Yeshua, believers in Jesus, that the one verse that really stuck out to me, especially for us here in America and say Europe, is it says, how rich have I become? I found wealth by myself. I won't be guilty of any sin. And it's basically speaking of this nation that has become wealthy, that has everything in the world. And I just look around my apartment right now and I say, whoa, like how. And God does, it says that when God blesses us, he will bless us. And those things will not basically hurt us when they're from him. But how many things have I taken in myself, or have I done on my own, that I feel like I did it? And, everything that we have is a blessing from Yahweh. I truly believe that. But a lot of these things hinder us. We were this weekend, we got to go to a wedding, and there was two different ceremonies. They had a traditional wedding, and then they also had a Nigerian wedding, because the groom was from Nigeria. So there was people from all over the world there, people from Nigeria. And I saw the faith in the first wedding, because it was a very biblically based Nigerian wedding. And I saw the faith of these people who don't have half the stuff that we have. They knew prayers that most Christians would have no clue. They had a relationship with God that I was like, wow. But when I talked to them, they didn't own the tenth of what we have. And I look at how much this stuff has clouded us, and how much this stuff has interfered with our relationship with Yahweh, because a lot of times we feel like we've done it and we've done nothing, but we've basically put obstacles in front of our way that basically hinder our relationship with our Creator. And speaking of the love, I truly believe Yeshua came back and when he came back and spoke on this love, because the Torah is all about love. It's all about how to treat our neighbors, how to treat our loved ones, how we're supposed to treat others. And that is something that man has dropped the ball on since the beginning.
Yes. Good points. Really good points.
What struck me this morning thinking about this major conflict between the Vatican, not to start ragging on the Catholics, but I was trained by a Jesuit professor in Catholicism for quite some time, catechism and all, and it was considered by him till I brought out too much questions about the fundamentals of the authority of Catholicism. Here we have this conflict as part of this mix, where there is a denial of the ability of these bishops to make proper accountability for all of this pedophilia that's been discovered recently in Pennsylvania, for example, and have a forum and a council to once and for all end this problem with abuse of youth by Catholic priests. And a direct order, short of a papal bull as cathedral, is no, you can't go there right now. And yet there's all this love that's admirable, it's exemplary, talking about the needs to protect the unborn. But I think about the double-mindedness. The Bible says a double-minded person is unstable, not in some other ways. It says in all other ways, where there's a simultaneity, if I've just made that word up, simultaneously wanting to protect the unborn. And yet when children are born, you have this abuse, that there's this cover-up. What a piece of irony, showing that it's not the spirit ultimately that we've been given of power and love and indeed of a sound mind.
Yes, Tom, that's really a good point. I'm going to let that be the wrap up on it. And it comes back down to what you're saying. Therefore, return, that is shuv, to your Elohim, to your God. Observe kindness and justice and wait for your God continually. Wow, that's a really good point. Very, very salient as to what is happening. And we can't be double-minded. We've got to understand and discern through these cultural things. Very good. Loved it. Well, we are ready for our next segment, and which we're going to jump right into. Now, I sent to you, Tom and James, the article, and for some devices, it was being blocked. So I also copied it and sent it to your email. But this is an article that I found on stevequayle.com, and it is over at a website called, and he posted it from pulpitandpen.org. Pulpitandpen.org. And the name of the article is Hillsong's Christmas musical trailer depicts Jesus born in a bar. Now, why am I saying this? You know, this is Messianic Lamb Radio. This is the Lamb Tube, and we do look at things from an Hebraic and Messianic point of view. But I one of the things that I like to do is talk about the cultural shifts and changes that are happening within the culture and in the ecclesia, or in the, shall we say, the church world, because it affects us. Everything affects us. It has a ripple effect. So in this article, and it's from November 17th, so it's very recent, it says increasingly, and this is not to slam anybody, it's just pointing out facts. When we point out the facts, it's so that we can learn how to shore up our faith. And this is what's very important. It says increasingly, Hillsong Church's Christmas musical production seemed to break the blasphemy barrier of the year before. So I got another layer of blasphemy that seems like they're going forward with. In 2015, Hillsong made international news for a Sleazy Night Christmas special, which was a cabaret and burlesque type show that incorporated Christmas hymns. At the time, charismatic apologist Michael Brown defended Hillsong from critics, claiming that they meant well. And going on, it says 2 years later, Hillsong one up the Sleazy Night presentation with yet another Christmas sensuality show, blaspheming God by masquerading flesh peddling as worship is nothing new. With Hillsong famously having a naked cowboy. Wait a minute, it seems like there's a gap there, but it says famously they've also promoted the naked cowboy, which appeared at a women's conference in 2016, and then the naked Santa later that year. Well, there's still time to see how flesh will be on display at Hillsong's Australia's Christmas program this year. Mark it down, it will be. This is an opinion piece that's putting together these things. It says Hillsong's London's Christmas program seems to be attempting to break the barrier of the worst retelling of the Christmas narrative ever. The trailer of the Hillsong London's Christmas program depicts the three wise men hunting down the newborn Christ at the inn. The inn in the Hillsong depiction was a place where the patrons were swilling mugs of beer at a bar while serving wenches dancing on tables. As the scene progresses, Jesus is depicted with Mary and Joseph still in the midst of the bar scene among much mirth and merriment. In reality, Jesus was born in the stable, not in the inn, which had no vacancy for this expectant mother, and laid in a manger or a feeding trough. The wise men or magi, whose number is unknown, found Jesus at his home sometime during the first year of his birth, just prior to their midnight flight to Egypt. Says the inns of the first century in Jerusalem, by the way, were not bars or brothels resembling Old West taverns, but informal guest rooms in larger residential houses. So, anyway, there it is. This is an article that's out there. It's basically just saying Hillsongs, which is probably a very, very influential church within the church world, within Christianity. It has these very trying to be culturally relevant and creative to depict Yeshua in these different scenes. And I just want us to kind of talk about this a little bit and see what your thoughts are on it. Sandy, what are you thinking about this?
I just think it's more evidence of where we've seen where we've seen such a cultural decline. I mean, it's just a continuing downward spiral. And I know we say, well, that's the Christian church, but we've got to understand that affects us too. And it hurts my heart because I know worship there was anointed and amazing there back in the 90s and early 2000s, and they had some good things to say, but right now what they're doing is they're spreading more lies, and they're spreading complacency, they're spreading compromise, and unfortunately most of the people are not bearers and searchers of truth. They like to be spoon-fed, and everyone, unfortunately, so many are looking for the excuse to, how close can I walk to sin and it be okay? Well, look, Jesus was born in a bar. They won't check that out. You know, they'll take that to heart and they'll run with it because everybody, I'm not saying everybody, but in general, people want to, as I said, walk as close to sin as they possibly can and not be gotten for it, so to speak. And they look for places, communities, quote unquote churches that will call their pet sin acceptable. And what this does is it bears such a false witness because it has influence. It has great influence, not just in Australia, but in the United States, in London, where all these sister churches are. And it dumbs the word down, and it brings stain on our Messiah in his character and the truth of what the word is, because people don't actually go to their scripture to seek out truth anymore. They take whatever you say and call it gospel, so to speak. And it shows the degradation of our minds. It also shows, that a place that maybe once had a vision to serve Jesus as they knew him, that was somewhat pure in what they knew. It just takes a little seed of poison, a drop of poison, and all of a sudden everything starts to change. The vision, the way you act, the way you present the word, even as a ministry or as a person. When you don't purge out what shouldn't be there and you let just a little thing come in, all of a sudden, as time goes on, you are in such a huge divide away from what truth truly is. And I think that's where we sit today. I don't think his agenda, Brian Houston's agenda, was always like this. I believe at one point in time it was pure. But if you don't take heart and take hold and study out the truth, the enemy is going to come in and lead you astray.
That's really true. And one of the cultural elements about a mega church is you have to feed the beast. And unless you start watering down the gospel, people in this culture, they don't want to hear the truth. They don't want
what I
to
said.
draw the line like that. But it requires money. And so, and people withhold money when they feel like their cultural beliefs are being challenged. And so you got to feed the beast, and you got to water down your gospel, and, you know, the things they've talked about pro-abortion and all that sort of stuff. And that's had an effect. I was just reading this thing here on the Aryan snare. And did y'all have a chance to look at that by chance, James or Tom? Do you want to address that?
What the Aryan snare or
Yeah.
the article here? I have.
Yeah. Go ahead. Both.
Well, basically, the article a while back, I did a teaching on Hillsong, and because they had come out with this new album, and on the new album, I wish I could show it to you, but they've got, it says "I am," and the "I am" is in the middle of a sun. Okay, it has a checkerboard floor at the bottom of it, which is all occult. We know that the Freemasons, they have the checkerboard floor. The eye on it has the two pillars, which sat out in front of the temple, which go in front of the Freemasons. I mean, it's got the basically the infinity symbol. It's a cult based to the T. And the thing about it is that just like you both said, they want to be like the world because they want to make that money. And if you want to make the money, then you start pulling in the occult. You start allowing basically to sell songs, to sell music. All Beyonce, you look at her, Jay-Z, they now say, "I am Sasha Fierce. I am Jay-Z." And they want to be God. And the same thing that Nimrod, the same thing that's went back from the beginning is man wants to be the creator of this world, because Hasatan, their God, wants to be the creator, and he'll never be. But if you just read, I mean, just anything about Hillsong, stay away from it. It's garbage. They basically they're riding the beast now, and it's just become very sad.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like the
Your cat.
yeah, we got a cat in the picture. So it's also I'm just thinking about what we we're talking about in the Haftarah portion about Esau's heel coming down on Jacob, and where Esau is putting his heel in to biblical faith in order to destroy faith, to water it down. These type of things, and when it talks about the Aryan snare, is about denying the divinity of Yeshua. It's really, that's the effect, is to deny his divinity by using and engaging in compelling music in order to lure people in to promote their point of view. Tom, what are your thoughts?
Well, just a quick aside, when I was with a Messianic congregation in Florida years ago, there was a slow but steady drift over into where the reality of Yeshua was pushed back, and more to where he was eclipsed by Torah. And I've seen this happen among Messianics. It swings the other way from what we're seeing with the tragedy of Hillsong. Here's the admonition I was thinking about with you all discussing this in Ephesians, excuse me, chapter 5 and verse 6. Let no one deceive you. We ought to have a heads up immediately with this admonition. With empty arguments, for Elohim's wrath is coming on the disobedient. Because of these things, therefore, do not become their partners. For you were once darkness. There was some illumination, like you were saying, Sandy, and there was some good things that were coming forth from Australia, from Hillsong. For you were once darkness, but now you are light in Yahweh. Walk as children of light, for the fruit of the light results in all goodness, righteousness, and truth, discerning what is pleasing to Yahweh. This is a continuous activity here. No, Yeshua is not born in a bar. They need to put an N on the end of that. He was born in a barn or a manger. So right there, there's just a shift, just enough tweaking of what is true. Discerning what is pleasing to Yahweh. Don't participate in the fruitless works of darkness, but instead, and that's what we're intending to do here, not to try to be overly critical and put people down, but because we love people, we don't want them to be walking in darkness. Don't participate in the fruitless works of darkness, but instead expose them. How does that happen? We should be like the children of Issachar, as we read in the scriptures, who were aware of the times, and this is male or female, folks. They were aware of the times in which they were living. They understood the cultural milieu, or the backdrop of what was happening currently, and how so remarkably, it's like Solomon says, there's nothing in the book of Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun. Hebraic expression of reality is not linear like in Hellenistic thought. It is circular. It goes around. What if we say what goes around comes around? And folks, it's happening again in these last days. Don't participate in the fruitless works of darkness, but instead expose them. For it is shameful even to mention. Some of this stuff is just shameful, what they're trying to do to, quote, promote their distorted gospel, unquote. It is shameful even to mention what is done by them in secret. Everything exposed by the light is made clear.
Yes.
For what makes everything clear is light. Therefore, it is said, and here we go. It's over in Romans 13 as well, awake, O sleeper. Here it says, get up, sleeper, and rise up from the dead, and the Messiah will shine on you. In Romans 13, it talks about, wake, O sleeper, for the time is near of the Messiah's second coming. The time is nearer than when you first believed.
Yes. Yes, that's really good. Sandy, you had a thought?
I just had this thought as you were talking. They keep coming out with this shock stuff, and you've heard the saying that there's no bad press. Do you think there is a purposeness done in having in pushing the envelope of degradation like this? So because people will come in, more will come in and check you out and be caught in the snare. Do you think this is done on purpose? Just a thought. Yeah, don't have to answer. It's just a thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or James.
James, what do you think?
I definitely think it's done on purpose. The more and more I watch and go back and look at their stuff, and I do it just specifically so I can teach others that, hey, this is why we don't do this. But even me, I'm paying attention to their garbage because I'm having to go and teach others not to do it. You know what I mean? It ensnares all of us. But that's where, if you have the armor of Yahweh on it, you basically you are protected from that evil. But we got to be careful not to dig too deep, not to go down the rabbit hole too much. Just stay on the top so that you can show others, hey, this is wrong.
Yes.
But don't go down that rabbit hole too deep.
Yes, yes, absolutely. That's a really good word. We're going to let that wrap up with that. And I do want to put this thought in, and I've been studying about the Melchizedek priesthood, and which is the king of righteousness, and how part of what righteousness is an armor. It's an armor that we wear. And if we're going to be part of Yeshua, who is our Melchizedek priesthood, our king of righteousness, we wear his armor, and we don't let it get tainted by the world. And by the way, I wanted to say this too, that isn't the word powerful enough to speak for itself, where you don't have to really bring it down to the dregs of life to try to depict Yeshua in just a decadent place, because he wasn't, Anyway, those are just some thoughts that I had. We're ready for the Torah portion. And James, you've got that segment for us today. So what do we got?
Today we've got Vayishlach. It means he sent. It's Genesis or Bereshit 32:4 through 36:43. We'll give a brief summary. On his trip back to Canaan, Jacob meets his brother Esau. Jacob wrestles with the angel, or the Malach. Then they arrive in Shechem, or basically the son of Shamar, the Hivite. He rapes Jacob's daughter, Dinah. Dinah's brothers, basically Simon and Levi, massacre the men of Shechem. Rivka dies. Elohim gives Jacob an additional name, Israel, and reaffirms the blessing to Abram that was given to Abram, his basically his forefather, that the land of Canaan, Israel, will be given to his descendants. Rachel dies after giving birth to Benjamin. Jacob's 12 sons are listed. Isaac dies. Esau's lineage is recorded as I can't even talk today, as that of the seer, the Hurite. And lastly, the succession of the kings of Edom is chronicled. We see that Jacob took his family and his possessions across the Jabbok River, but he remained behind, and it was left alone. And a man, the word in Hebrew is ish, a man, basically Jacob wrestles with a man, and then we find out that he was wrestling with God, and that a little later in Hosea, we see that basically he was wrestling with this Malach, this angel. And here's my question. If no man could see the face of God and live, is what we're told in Exodus, who was he wrestling with? He was wrestling, exactly, Sandy. He was wrestling with the pre-incarnate Yeshua HaMashiach. We see it all throughout the Tanakh. So when you're discussing or talking with our Jewish brethren out there, and they say, "Hey, Yeshua, that he was not the Messiah," we can show Genesis 18. We can show Genesis when he's walking. Yahweh's walking in the garden. We've got the arm. It's just all throughout the Tanakh. But you have to look for it. You have to dig deep to find it. But so he basically wrestles with Yeshua. We see that he's given the name Israel because he asked for a blessing. He says, "I'm not letting go until you bless me." And the other thing I thought was pretty neat here is that we know that when Yeshua came in the flesh, that he was a man. He had all the manly features. He had everything. And he was just like us. So the fact is that we see that Jacob prevails over God. He prevails over, and I truly believe he let him. But anyways, basically he prevails over Yeshua in the flesh. And the whole point of this is that, yes, when he came, he was a man. He had all the features as us. And Jacob was a pretty strong man. We see him. He moves the boulder off of the well so that everybody could help water it, or basically so they could water the animals. We see that he grabs the heel. He wrestles basically with Yeshua, but then Yeshua takes his hip, basically knocks his hip out of joint. And he walks with a limp, and we'll keep going. I could go on forever about that. But then we see that basically some Jewish sages claim that that it was Esau's guardian angel. We know that's not true. We know that because they didn't have the full picture that we have today, where we could see. But during the grappling match, we also see that Yeshua asks him, "What is your name?" And the angel, basically, a little later, we see, I want to say it's Samson's parents ask, "What is your name?" And he says, you can't know my name because it basically calls it a secret or a mystery. What's the word, Sandy? Do you guys know what I'm saying? The verse, he says, "Why do you ask me my name? Because it's Tom." Wonderful. And that word wonderful can mean mystery, can mean hidden, can mean secret. But at the same time, we also know that he's called the wonderful counselor, the one who would come. But there's just a lot of things in this Torah portion. I always get off ranty, never get what I fully want to talk about. But the one thing I will say is that Jacob, we see this whole thing going back and forth with Jacob's having to battle his past. He's having to battle the things that he's done. And we can put this towards our own lives, because once we battled our past, we can move forward, and through Yeshua we have redemption. Through him, through this Malach that he wrestled with, as we wrestle with our past, we can have redemption through Yeshua HaMashiach. And we're going to talk about redemption, talk about the redeeming value. We no longer have to focus on those things that we've done in the past through Yeshua, our Messiah.
Amen. Amen. Go ahead, Sandy.
Well, I think that's so good how you summarized it there at the end, because you said we don't have to battle our past anymore. Now, when we do look at our past, it should be through the eyes of teshuvah, and that means that we need to deal with not only the sins that we've done, but we deal with the sins even that have been in generations past. Why? Because we don't want the enemy to hold sway in the court of heaven over us, because he goes about seeking whom he may devour. He goes around listening, looking, and using that against us. But when we only look through our past through the eyes of teshuvah, when we go before him, then where our focus is we trust in him. Our gaze is upon him. Our gaze is knowing that he's taking care of it. We don't have to keep bringing it up unless we're revisiting that thing. But his blood was enough. It was enough. But here's the catcher. Sometimes we get hooked in there, and the enemy uses that to torment and to bring you to a point where you can't move forward. And I don't know about you, but if you drive a car looking behind you, you will crash. That's what will happen. And so we need to make sure our perspective when we look at the past isn't where we stay. It may be we get through that place and we use it as a testimonial, but to glorify him and say, look what he's done. but our gaze does need to be upon what's in front of us, because we will stumble if we live in that point, and we're not supposed to live there. We are not supposed to live there, not even for a minute. But if we do go there, it is through teshuva, and then we go on. We've got to go on. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we walk through that place so that we can join him.
Amen. I really like that whole struggle that Jacob had, that wrestling match with Yeshua, is really, when we boil it down to it, that where he says, when he comes out of this in verse 30, so Jacob named the place Peniel, for he said, I have seen God, I've seen Elohim face to face, yet my life has been preserved. And what is it? Because in that struggle, in that wrestling match, he really had to come to grips with who he was and who he is, and the struggles that he dealt with, like you said, James, the battles, and he had to be changed. And in the struggles of life, it's when we finally come to that place where we're so worn out that we're actually able to look at ourselves and say, whoa, I'm just undone.
But isn't that what should happen when we're in his presence? We should always be changed.
Yeah, and that's the point. When we're in his presence, then what do? We see him face to face. We see ourselves as we really are, but then we see him. His presence, his face is transforming. And that's really, really huge, because it's humbling. It gives us an understanding of who we are and who he really is. But honestly, then it's empowering.
That's right.
And it changes our walk. Absolutely. I mean, he walked away with a limp after that. His whole walk changed. But the fact is everything changed. His name changed. Everything about him, his character changed. And that's the result of the wrestle. If we never come to that wrestling match, we're never really changed. So that's some really good points. Tom, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, before
Tom, we lost you there.
I was struck at this season, when we're talking about all this, of how thankful we're coming into Thanksgiving this Thursday as far as a national observance. And I think about what it says. I'll just quote, I won't go there in the interest of time, in Corinthians, where Paul says, thanks be to Elohim for this unspeakable or indescribable, inexpressible gift that we have in our Savior, Messiah, Yeshua. And so when you read what Yeshua says in several gospel accounts, the ultimate thanks that we're going to hear in eternity, as I understand it, speaking of Thanksgiving, is being shown the gratitude from our Creator when he says, I think the most wonderful words we'll ever hear in eternity for one of the Father's children by Yeshua. Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your Father. What words of gratitude or thanksgiving back to us for willing to be a bondservant of the Most High.
Yes. Yes, that's really good. Really good. I have thought about that day. I just thought about, we have these opportunities that we can have, in the past, and I think I still use this term, is we have these come to Jesus moments, where, and I use that term, I don't want anybody to be offended, because I use his name as Yeshua. But in our culture, and for those that are listening, some people, still relate to Jesus, and it's the same thing. He's our Messiah. And that we have these moments in life, and they're significant from the time that we first come to him to different times in our lives, that we're on our knees and we're face to face with him. And those are life-changing moments. I think for Jacob, it was a life-changing moment when he, in last week's Torah portion, where he was on Mount Moriah, and he used a stone as a pillow, and he had that encounter with God, with the angels ascending and descending. That was a moment that changed his life. I think that moment helped him through the next 20 years of his life until he was able to return. So, But then again, life gets in the way. We get these cultural things get thrown at us, and it seems so real. We get enticed and we get moved, like we were talking about Hillsongs earlier, and how in that phrase that's being used as what was it called? The Aryan snare, snared, baited, lured by music. That's what this guy, he was a heretic in the early church. And when he was kicked out, then he came up and wrote songs for sailors and with catchy tunes and for others, in order that pulled them away from a lifestyle of godliness, and then brought them, and separating them from God. And we have to always check ourselves, because the cultural norms are very enticing. So I don't know, just some thoughts about all that. James, do you want to add and wrap it up for us?
Yeah, it's just something hit me as you're talking about music. Hasatan, we know in Babylon, what did they use to ensnare the people? They used music. That was, I forget that I was trying to look it up right when you asked me. But there's a verse, and I don't know if it's I think it's in Ezekiel. Ezekiel indicates that Satan basically, or one of the verses, maybe it's Isaiah, but it talks about them using certain music to entice. And if you just look at our music industry today, the music industry is so satanic. It has become so full of Baphomet and all these evil, wicked, occult-like fixtures. And we really got to be careful what we take in, what we listen to, the things that basically the things that we put in our mind, that they can hinder our relationship with Yahweh. And we just see that if we stay focused, we keep our walk right with Yahweh. We want to constantly stay on that straight and narrow path. And then, like Sandi said earlier, teshuva, when we do mess up, it's got to be a quick repentance, a quick turning back, seeking Yahweh's face and repenting from the heart. It's a heart issue. We truly have to ask for that forgiveness and truly be meaningful when we do. And Yahweh will forgive, but he will not allow us to keep making those same mistakes. Just be very careful what we listen to, what we watch, what we do, because we are not a part of this world. We have been transformed, and we are no longer we're supposed to be sojourners waiting for the end result, and that is Yeshua coming back.
Amen. When you talk about that straight and narrow path, I want to add to that is that it's not burdensome. That's where the true freedom is, because that's where his life is infused in us. That's where we're empowered more than any to walk the life out. And that's where the joy is the greatest. It's when when we start to divert from that path, isn't it true that that's when we start to lose joy? And the joy that we have is maybe manufactured, or we try to fill it with these things. And maybe we start to fill it with cultural things that make us feel good, because the vacuum is suddenly there because we're not filling it with Yah. So just some thoughts. Tom, you want to say a few last words?
Sure. Yeshua says, "Come and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly of heart, and my burden is easy and my yoke is light." What is that yoke? He showed me years ago by the Spirit. He's carrying the major load for us. And we walk with the Messiah in many ways like Yaakov with a limp, but his burden is easy and his yoke is light. It's not a burden. The way the scripture says of the transgressor is hard in comparison with what we have is a relatively easy walk compared to those that are still walking in the darkness of this present evil world.
Yes. Very good. Well, that's great. And let's just wrap it up with that. Boy, James, thank you for bringing the Torah portion, and Tom, the Haftarah, and these different things, because they all interlace today, even with the article, and just maybe some things that'll give us and those that are come back and view this even at a later time some encouragement to understand where we are, where we're going, and really who our pursuit is. And our pursuit is Yeshua the Messiah. So to close out today, I just want to let everybody know there's 3 ways to know what's happening on Lamb Radio and here at LambTube. and you can go to the Lamb Radio Facebook page. And then also every other Sunday, we're sending out emails, and which will give you updates of what's happening. And on the Lamb Events Bulletin Board, which is found on the MessianicLambRadio.com homepage. And then our sponsors, when you click on the sponsors banners and you purchase from them, your purchase does go to help sponsor Lamb Radio, and we appreciate that. And you, our listeners, when you donate to Lamb Radio, you also become a sponsor. We appreciate that. Those that are with us today, we don't receive anything from it. We are here because our heart is to minister to you and to provide an open forum by which we can engage with you in the culture from a biblical Hebraic perspective. And so tomorrow, I want to encourage everybody to listen and join in and be part of the conversation with the Chameleon Church, same time and same place here on Lamb Radio, and where they discuss biblical antidotes to the modern man, and probably even continuing the discussion. We've got Alan Aguirre hosting it, co-hosted by Jamie Louie, Tom Collins, and Rabbi Daryl Weinberg. So I want to say thank you, James and Tom and Sandy, for being with me today and being part of this great show. Loved it. And had a great time at it. So till next time, I just want to say blessings and shalom. And it was good to be with you today.